There's a fungus that makes leather. Not imitation leather, not plastic that pretends to be leather, not the synthetic alternatives that crack after a year and peel after two. Real leather, biological leather. Leather that breathes and ages and develops character exactly like animal leather. This fungus makes leather that is stronger than cowhide. Laboratory tests show tensile strength exceeding traditional leather by 10 to 20%. The same stress that tears cowhide does not tear fungal leather. The same wear that destroys animal skin does not destroy fungal skin. This fungus makes leather that is softer than cowhide. The texture rivals the finest Italian calfskin. The hand feel is supple and warm. Fashion designers who have touched it cannot believe it did not come from an animal. They run their fingers across it again and again, searching for the difference they cannot find. This fungus makes leather in 2 weeks. A cow takes 3 years to reach slaughter weight. The hide then requires 6 months to 2 years of tanning with toxic chemicals. The total time from conception to finished leather is 4 to 5 years. The fungus produces equivalent material in 14 days. 2 weeks from spore to sheet, 2 weeks from nothing to leather. The same material that takes years from animals takes days from fungus. This fungus requires no killing. No animal suffers. No animal dies. No creature with a nervous system experiences pain or fear. The fungus grows on agricultural waste, converting garbage into luxury material. This fungus requires no toxic chemicals. Traditional leather tanning uses chromium, formaldehyde, and dozens of other poisons. These chemicals pollute rivers. They poison workers. They contaminate the finished product that touches your skin. Fungal leather requires nothing toxic. The growth medium is organic. The processing is mechanical. The finished material is pure enough to compost when you are done with it. This fungus could replace a $400 billion industry overnight. The global leather market generates $400 billion per year. That market depends on killing 1.4 billion animals annually. That market depends on toxic tanning processes. That market depends on supply chains that take years to deliver product. Fungal leather threatens every element of this market. Faster production, cheaper materials, no animals, no chemicals, no reason for the traditional industry to exist. And the fashion industry has made sure you never heard about it. Because a material that replaces leather replaces the companies that sell leather. A technology that anyone can grow threatens corporations that control supply chains. An alternative that works destroys markets worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Today, we are opening the file on the fungus that makes better leather than cows, the material that grows in 2 weeks instead of 4 years, the technology that the fashion industry has hidden because it makes their business model obsolete, and the reason you are still buying dead animal skin when living fungus makes something better. If this matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. The file is open. The fungus is called Mycelium. Mycelium is not a mushroom. Mycelium is what mushrooms grow from. It is the vast underground network of threads that colonizes soil, wood, and organic matter. It is the body of the fungus. The mushroom is just the fruit. If a mushroom is an apple, mycelium is the tree. If a mushroom is a flower, mycelium is the plant. The part we see is the smallest part. The part we ignore is the largest part. A single fungal colony can extend for miles underground. The largest organism on Earth is a honey fungus in Oregon whose mycelium network spans 2,385 acres. It weighs an estimated 6,000 tons. It is between 2,400 and 8,650 years old. This network is made of threads called hyphae. Each hypha is a tube of cells that grows at its tip, extending outward, branching, merging with other hyphae, creating a three-dimensional web of biological material. This web is surprisingly strong. It is surprisingly flexible. It is surprisingly similar to the collagen matrix that makes animal leather what it is. Scientists noticed this similarity decades ago. They noticed that dried mycelium felt like leather. They noticed that it could be processed like leather. They noticed that nature had already invented leather without animals. But the science sat unused because there was no economic pressure to replace leather. Animals were cheap. Pollution was free. The industry had no reason to change. Then the economics shifted. In 2007, a company called Ecovative Design began working with mycelium as a packaging material. They discovered that mycelium could be grown into any shape using molds. The material was strong, lightweight, and biodegradable. The founder, Eben Bayer, was not thinking about leather. He was thinking about replacing styrofoam. He was thinking about packaging that did not persist in landfills for thousands of years. But the technology he developed created new possibilities. If mycelium could be grown into packaging shapes, it could be grown into sheets. If it could replace styrofoam, maybe it could replace leather. The research expanded. Scientists at multiple institutions began studying mycelium as a leather alternative. They discovered that the properties could be controlled by changing growing conditions. They discovered that different fungal species produced different textures. They discovered that what had seemed like a curiosity was actually a platform technology with unlimited applications. By 2013, the first serious mycelium leather companies had formed. Bolt Threads launched Milo. MycoWorks launched Reishi. Smaller companies followed. The race to replace animal leather with fungal leather had begun. The fashion industry watched with alarm. The science of mycelium leather is surprisingly simple. Mycelium grows by digesting organic material. It secretes enzymes that break down complex molecules, then absorbs the nutrients released. Given food and moisture and proper conditions, mycelium grows rapidly. To make leather, you provide the mycelium with a food source spread in a thin layer. Agricultural waste works perfectly. Corn stalks, sawdust, hemp hurds, straw. Material that would otherwise be burned or landfilled becomes the foundation for luxury goods. The mycelium colonizes the substrate over 7 to 14 days. The hyphae spread through the material, binding it together, creating a dense mat of fungal tissue. The network becomes so thick that the individual threads are no longer visible. What remains is a solid sheet. This sheet is then harvested. The growth is stopped by reducing moisture or changing temperature. The living network becomes stable material. The sheet is then processed. It can be compressed to increase density. It can be treated with natural oils to improve flexibility. It can be embossed with patterns that mimic animal skin grain. It can be dyed with any color. The final material is leather in every functional sense. It can be cut and stitched. It can be formed into shoes and bags and jackets and furniture. It behaves like leather because it is leather, just grown from a different kingdom of life. The properties can be adjusted by changing the process. Thicker growth produces stiffer material suitable for shoe soles and belts. Thinner growth produces suppler material suitable for garments and handbags. Different fungal species produce different textures, from smooth to suede-like. The control available exceeds what is possible with animal hides. Every cow hide is different because every cow is different. Every sheet of mycelium leather can be identical because the growing conditions are controlled. This consistency is why luxury brands have taken interest. They can specify exactly what they want and receive exactly what they specified. The variability that forces leather workers to sort and grade and reject animal hides disappears with fungal production. The environmental comparison between fungal and animal leather is not close. A single cowhide requires a cow. That cow requires 3 years of feeding. That feeding requires land for grazing or crops for feed. That land requires water and fertilizer and pesticides. The total water footprint of one cow is approximately 1.8 million gallons over its lifetime. The total land footprint is approximately 2 acres of pasture, or the crop equivalent. The total carbon footprint is approximately 8 tons of CO2 equivalent. All of this produces one hide. One hide that then requires tanning. Tanning is the process that converts raw hide into stable leather. Without tanning, hide rots. With tanning, it lasts decades or centuries. Traditional tanning uses chromium salts. Chromium tanning was developed in 1858 and remains dominant because it is fast and produces soft leather. It also produces toxic waste. Tannery effluent contains chromium, sulfides, acids, and organic matter. This effluent poisons rivers downstream of every tannery. The city of Kanpur in India, a major leather production center, has groundwater so contaminated that it causes cancer and birth defects in local populations. Tannery workers suffer elevated rates of respiratory disease, skin disease, and cancer. The chromium they handle is a known carcinogen. The chemicals they breathe cause permanent damage. This is the true cost of leather, not just the price tag. The environmental destruction, the human suffering, the animal death that underlies every product. Mycelium leather requires none of this. The water footprint is approximately 99% less than animal leather. The growth medium is agricultural waste that requires no new resources. The processing uses no toxic chemicals. The carbon footprint is negative. The mycelium absorbs carbon as it grows. The agricultural waste would have released carbon if decomposed normally. The fungal process sequesters rather than emits. The human cost is zero. Workers face no toxic exposure. Communities face no pollution. No one suffers to make fungal leather. The animal cost is zero. No creature dies. No creature is raised in confinement. No creature experiences the terror of the slaughterhouse. By every environmental and ethical measure, fungal leather is superior. By every measure except one: price. The fashion industry has hidden mycelium leather by controlling the narrative around cost. Current mycelium leather costs more than animal leather. The technology is new. Production is not yet at scale. The economics have not yet reached parity. The industry points to this cost difference as proof that mycelium leather is not ready. They argue that consumers will not pay premium prices. They argue that the material cannot compete. This argument is self-serving and historically illiterate. Every new technology costs more than the old technology it replaces. The first automobiles cost more than horses. The first electric lights cost more than candles. The first computers cost more than typewriters. Costs fall as production scales. This is the most reliable pattern in economic history. The mycelium leather that costs $25 per square foot today will cost $5 per square foot when production reaches scale. The material that seems expensive now will seem cheap in a decade. The fashion industry knows this. They have seen this pattern with every material innovation in history. They know that mycelium leather will become cost competitive. They know that when it does, their animal leather business dies. So they delay, they hide. They promote the current cost difference while working to slow the development that will eliminate it. Major fashion conglomerates have made investments in mycelium leather companies. These investments come with board seats. These board seats come with influence. The companies developing mycelium leather are partially controlled by the companies threatened by mycelium leather. This is not conspiracy theory. This is documented corporate strategy. Control the disruption or be destroyed by it. Co-opt the technology or lose to it. The fashion houses that make billions from animal leather are positioning themselves to control fungal leather when it becomes inevitable. They are slowing the transition while preparing to dominate it. Meanwhile, they ensure that consumers never hear about the alternative. They never advertise mycelium leather. They never promote it in fashion media. They never explain to customers that the leather jacket they are buying required killing a cow when a fungus could have provided the same material. The silence is strategic. The ignorance is cultivated. The hiding is deliberate. The properties of mycelium leather exceed animal leather in ways the industry does not want you to know. Tensile strength, the ability to resist being pulled apart, is higher in mycelium leather. Laboratory testing by independent researchers has documented this advantage consistently. The material that grows in 2 weeks is stronger than the material that grows in 3 years. Tear resistance, the ability to resist being ripped once a tear has started, is comparable between the materials. Mycelium leather does not excel here, but it does not fail either. Flexibility, the ability to bend without cracking, is higher in mycelium leather. The material remains supple through more bending cycles. It ages more gracefully than animal leather. Breathability, the ability to pass air and moisture, is comparable between the materials. Both are biological materials with similar structures. Both allow skin to breathe when worn. Water resistance can be engineered into mycelium leather through treatment. The material can be made water resistant or waterproof depending on application. This is also true of animal leather, but the treatments required for animal leather often involve additional toxic chemicals. Biodegradability is where mycelium leather dramatically exceeds animal leather. Chrome-tanned leather does not biodegrade. The chromium preserves it indefinitely. Leather products persist in landfills for decades or centuries. Mycelium leather biodegrades completely. When you are done with a mycelium leather product, you can compost it. It returns to soil within months. It feeds the next generation of growth rather than poisoning the environment. The life cycle is circular. Agricultural waste becomes leather. Leather becomes product. Product becomes compost. Compost grows crops. Crops produce waste. The cycle continues indefinitely without depletion or pollution. Animal leather has no such cycle. It extracts and discards. It takes from nature and gives back only poison. The luxury brands that have quietly adopted mycelium leather are not talking about it. Stella McCartney has used Milo in products. Adidas has prototyped shoes with mycelium leather. Lululemon has explored the material. Kering, the conglomerate that owns Gucci and Saint Laurent and Balenciaga, has invested in bolt threads. These are not fringe players. These are the dominant forces in global fashion. They have seen the material. They have tested the material. They know the material works. They have not told you. You have not seen advertising campaigns featuring mycelium leather. You have not seen magazine spreads explaining the technology. You have not seen runway shows celebrating the innovation. The brands that know are not sharing what they know. They are protecting their current business while preparing to capture the future business. When mycelium leather becomes cheap enough to threaten animal leather, these brands will announce it as if they invented it. They will take credit for the innovation they are currently hiding. They will reposition themselves as sustainable pioneers while having delayed sustainability for years. This is how corporate power works. Control the narrative. Control the timing. Capture the credit. The consumer is kept ignorant until the corporation is ready to profit from their enlightenment. The tanning industry sees what is coming and is terrified. Traditional tanneries represent massive capital investment. The equipment, the real estate, the supply chains, all of this infrastructure becomes worthless when animals are no longer killed for leather. Tannery workers, many in developing countries, face displacement. The skills they have developed become obsolete. The communities built around tanning face collapse. This economic disruption is real. It deserves acknowledgement. The transition away from animal leather will cause suffering among those who depend on the current system. But this suffering does not justify perpetuating a greater suffering. The 1.4 billion animals killed annually for leather experience far more aggregate pain than the workers who will transition to new employment. The environmental destruction caused by tanneries harms far more people than the economic disruption of closing tanneries will harm. The industries facing disruption deserve transition assistance. They do not deserve the right to perpetuate harm indefinitely. The history of technology is the history of disruption. Weavers suffered when power looms arrived. Stable hands suffered when automobiles arrived. Typesetters suffered when desktop publishing arrived. We do not preserve harmful industries to protect jobs. We help workers transition while embracing better alternatives. Mycelium leather is the better alternative. The transition is coming. The only question is how much longer the fashion industry can delay it. Growing mycelium leather at home is simpler than the industry wants you to believe. The process is not fundamentally different from growing mushrooms. The same organisms, the same basic requirements, different end products. You need a fungal culture. Oyster mushroom spawn works well for beginners. It grows aggressively, tolerates imperfect conditions, and produces dense mycelium. Spawn is available from mushroom supply companies for approximately $20. You need a growth substrate. Straw is traditional and effective. Shred it finely and pasteurize it by soaking in hot water for 1 to 2 hours. This kills competing organisms while leaving the cellulose intact for the mycelium to consume. You need a container. A shallow tray works well for leather production. The mycelium will grow to fill whatever container you provide. A baking sheet with raised edges produces a sheet of predictable size. You need patience. The growth takes 1 to 2 weeks depending on temperature and humidity. Higher temperatures accelerate growth. Higher humidity prevents drying. The process begins by mixing spawn with substrate. Spread this mixture in your container at a depth of approximately 1 inch. Cover loosely to maintain humidity while allowing gas exchange. Place in a warm location, approximately 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Darkness is preferred but not essential. Avoid direct sunlight, which can overheat the culture. Within days, white mycelium becomes visible, spreading through the substrate. The growth accelerates as the network establishes. By day 7, the surface should be completely colonized. Continue growing until the material reaches desired thickness and density. This typically requires another week. The mycelium will form a cohesive sheet that can be peeled from the container. Dry the sheet slowly. Rapid drying causes cracking. Slow drying at room temperature over several days produces flexible material. Treat the dried sheet with natural oils to improve flexibility and water resistance. Coconut oil works. Linseed oil works. The oil penetrates the material and prevents brittleness. The result is leather. Not perfect leather. Not leather equal to what laboratories produce with optimized processes. But leather, you made yourself from mushroom spawn and straw. The first attempt will be imperfect. The second will be better. By the 5th attempt, you will understand the process intuitively and produce material good enough for simple projects. This DIY possibility is what the industry fears most. A consumer who can grow leather does not need to buy leather. A community that shares cultivation knowledge does not need the fashion supply chain. A world where anyone can produce luxury material is a world where luxury cannot be controlled. The industry maintains power through control of supply. They control animal husbandry. They control tanning chemistry. They control distribution networks. They cannot control mushrooms. Mushrooms grow everywhere. The knowledge to cultivate them is freely available. The materials required are agricultural waste that accumulates in every community. If mycelium leather production became common knowledge, the industry would face competition from millions of small producers. The artificial scarcity that supports luxury pricing would collapse. The profit margins that fund corporate fashion would disappear. This is why the industry hides the technology. Not because it does not work, because it works too well, because it threatens to democratize what they have monopolized. The ethical dimension of leather production is increasingly difficult to ignore. Consumers are more aware than ever of where products come from. They know that leather comes from animals. They know that animals suffer in industrial agriculture. They know that their purchases have consequences. The industry responds with obfuscation. They use terms like genuine leather and full-grain leather that emphasize material quality while obscuring material origin. They show leather products without showing slaughterhouses. They create distance between consumer and consequence. Mycelium leather requires no such obfuscation. There is no violence to hide. There is no suffering to obscure. The product can be transparent because the process is ethical. This transparency is a competitive advantage that the industry cannot counter. They cannot make animal leather ethical. They cannot eliminate the killing. They can only hide it. When consumers understand that an alternative exists, an alternative that is equally functional and fully ethical, the choice becomes obvious. The industry knows this. They delay the understanding as long as possible. Every year that consumers remain ignorant of mycelium leather is another year of sales for animal leather. Every year of sales is another billion animals killed. The hiding has consequences measured in lives. The future belongs to materials that do not require killing. This is not wishful thinking. This is trend analysis. Every generation cares more about animal welfare than the generation before. Every year, the market for ethical alternatives grows. The fashion industry sees the data. They know that younger consumers reject animal products at higher rates. They know that the customer base for animal leather is aging and shrinking. They are preparing for a world where mycelium leather dominates. They are making investments. They are building capabilities. They are positioning themselves to profit from the transition they are publicly denying. The consumer who waits for the industry to lead will wait forever. The industry will never announce that their current products are inferior and unnecessary. They will never volunteer that an alternative exists. They will never sacrifice current profits for future ethics. The change comes from consumers who learn what the industry hides. It comes from demand that the industry cannot ignore. It comes from people who choose differently because they know differently. You now know. You know that mycelium makes leather. You know that it grows in 2 weeks. You know that it requires no killing and no toxic chemicals. You know that the fashion industry has hidden this technology. You know that they have invested in it while concealing it. You know that their silence is strategic and self-serving. You know that you can grow mycelium leather yourself. You know that the process is simple. You know that the materials are cheap and the knowledge is available. You know that every leather product you buy represents a choice between animal and fungus, a choice between killing and growing, a choice between an industry that hides and a technology that liberates. The fungus is growing in laboratories around the world right now. It is growing in pilot facilities, scaling up production. It is growing in homes where people have learned what you have just learned. It will replace animal leather. The only question is when. The industry wants it to be later. They want more years of profit from animal death. They want more time to position themselves for the transition. You can accelerate the timeline by talking about mycelium leather, by demanding it from brands, by growing it yourself and showing others what is possible. The fashion industry has hidden this for long enough. The hiding ends today. If this video helped you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every share exposes what they wanted hidden. The next video opens soon.